Today we'll do two suttas, if time permits, beginning with sutta number 9, SG 39.9. So we begin our study today with the Asibandaka Buddha Sutta, S 42.6. This is a story about prayer, the effectiveness of prayer, and the Buddhist perspective of it. So this is a very useful reminder for us on the true approach to Buddhist training, if you like. Now the title is Asibandaka Buddha Sutta. So this is a sutta name after a person. This is not his real name, it's quite obvious, because it's got the word Buddha at the end, son of. The son, here Buddha can also mean a young person. Asibandaka, Asi means sword, Bandaka is someone who binds something. Here of course binding has a broad sense of someone making a sword, so you can translate Asibandaka as a sword binder, if you like, or a sword maker, a weapon maker. Here Asi is clearly referring to sword, not weapons in general. So this person probably is a swordsmith or swordsmith's son, or a young swordsmith, if you like. And he approaches the Buddha with a question. Right? So let's look at this sutta on the translation on page 169. At one time, the Blessed One was staying in Pavarika's mango grove near Nalanda. So here, with the scene is towards, if you like, the far eastern side of northern India, the eastern end of the Gangetic Plain, where Nalanda is today, of course, and this is in the mango grove. Then the headman Asibandaka Buddha. So from this word headman, you probably know that he's actually probably quite an elderly person, although so he sends the word Buddha to translate as son of the swordsmith's son. He approached the Blessed One, saluted him, and sat down at one side. Seated thus at one side, Asibandaka Buddha, the headman, said this to the Blessed One. So this is the introduction. Okay? Now you find there's a whole chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya under the heading of headman. So in other words, you find these leaders, they often come to the Buddha with all kinds of questions and requests and so on. So this is his question. Notice he addresses the Buddha as Bhante, so it's a kind of respect for the Buddha. He doesn't address the Buddha by name. Bhante, the Brahmins of the Western region, those who carry water pots around where gardens of water plants, immerse themselves in water, and worship fire, are said to direct a dead person upwards to guide them along, conduct him to heaven. That is the first part. But might the Blessed One, the Arahant, who is awakened, be able to bring this about? That is to say, with the bodies breaking up after death, all the world might be reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. Alright, quite a long question. Okay, let's examine this key passage, the two parts here, 3.1, 3.2. Here, Asibandaka Buddha mentions the Brahmins of the West. Now this is interesting because we know in the Buddhist time, the area where the Buddha lived, that is Central Gangetic Plain, is predominantly Kshatriya. The Kshatriya was an ascendant. This warrior class were an ascendant. In other words, the kings were very powerful. They were kind of building up their kingdoms, and this is the foundation of the future Indian Empire. The Indian Empire began in the Buddha's time, if you like. Later on, Ashoka was able to build this huge and very prosperous Indian Empire, biggest that she ever had. So the Brahmins were kind of pushed to the west, far west, and so they're called the Brahmins of the West. And these Brahmins are the traditional ritualist kind of Brahmins. They carry water pot. In other words, they have this like a bingo stick, and they carry their religious utensils, two water pots, and they put their body paraphernalia in these water pots. It's like today will be a knapsack or some kind of a backpack, if you like. And they wear garlands of water plants, right? So that these are regarded as sacred kind of sign of the holy man. And they practice baptism. They soak inside water, come out, and they also worship fire. So they worship the elements, in other words. And they are believed to be able to direct the dead to a kind of a higher life, right? Now this belief is interestingly still popular today. You find that people who may not be religious, but when someone dies, they are compelled to invite the professional chanters, whether they are laymen or monks. Because they believe that, someone told me, you've got to leave this to the experts. I'm not sure what he means by this. In other words, when someone dies, we leave it to the experts. In the Buddhist view, when someone dies, we should leave it to the loved ones. The loved ones are the ones, the people closest to the deceased should be the ones taking care of the deceased. The professionals are just there for social endorsement, if you like, right? So, in other words, people who say leave it to the experts, they are placing, in the Pali we say, lokalipataya. In other words, they place the world first. It's very important how they look in the eye of society, in other words. It doesn't matter whether we are good or not. See? So, the spiritual aspect is not more important. In other words, we're going to inherit this property and we want to make sure society doesn't talk bad about us, things like that. So it's a very worldly kind of approach. So the priests, the chanters, they do their prayers. And, well, of course, there's a belief they'll go to heaven. So this was also a popular belief in this time. And the Brahmins claimed they could do this. Of course, these are things we can't really prove, right? So this is one of the big problems in religion. You find very often when a religious person talks, at some point, and this covers all religions, including Buddhism, they may say things that we can't really prove. And two, the big problems in Buddhism is the teaching of karma and rebirth. We often talk about this, but it's very hard to prove these things. But of course, there are ways of explaining why it's better to believe in karma and rebirth. They're not, but that's another point, which we may or may not cover later today. But of course, we know in Buddhism, the Buddha often reminds us, if the Buddha talks about devas and animals that can talk, we don't really assume that these are really animals who actually talk or devas that actually exist. We don't have to believe that. Of course, if you want to believe in that too, well, it doesn't really matter, it's a private belief, but it is not instrumental, it is not an essential part of our awakening process, in other words, right? Because in meditation, ultimately, you've got to let go of all ideas or views anyway. Right? So, in a sense, it's very easy, very safe to be a Buddhist, because as a Buddhist, the less beliefs, the less views you have, the easier your journey is. As the Buddha says in the Dhammapada, empty this boat, O monk, you will sail faster in an empty boat. Because your boat is laden, you're going to move slower, and if there's bad weather, it's going to be more dangerous. So in other words, the empty boat here means your mind is clear of views, full of joy. Empty of views, full of joy, right? You can only be truly happy when your mind is free of views, in other words. Alright, so coming back to this sutta, so now the Asibandaka Buddha asked the Buddha, I said, look, this Brahmins clearly they became send the souls of the dead to heaven. How come the word souls are mentioned here? This says the dead person can be directed to heaven. So he asked the Buddha a quite frank question, can you do this? I mean, isn't it wonderful if you can do this and get the whole world to go to heaven? So that's the question. Alright, so after that, section 4 onwards, the Buddha's answer. In that case, Hitman, I will question you about this. Answer it as you see fit. Okay, here you are. Here is a teaching where the Buddha gives a counter question. Alright, remember there are 4 ways of answering a question, right? So the first one is called a close question, meaning you answer yes or no. Yes or no. Alright? Then the second is a kind of open question. For example, what is karma? What did the Buddha teach? You cannot answer yes or no, you have to explain in more detail. The third one is a counter question. For example, what do you mean? Right? Asking the person to explain the terms. The fourth one is silence. In other words, this question is wrongly put. You can say, I don't think it's fair for us to discuss as a question. In fact, the word fair in Pali is called sahadhamika. It's not a just question, it's not a valid question, it's not a fair question. For example, if I ask you, are Martians green? As one famous scholar mentioned this example. Whether you say yes or no, you would kind of implicitly believe in Martians. If I said no, Martians are not green, by saying no, I would authentically endorse the fact, or rather believe in Martians. So here you cannot answer yes or no. Rather, if you're wise, you would say, the question doesn't make sense. I don't think I want to answer it. That's the meaning of silence. Okay? So these are 4 ways. So here the Buddha gives a counter question. Actually, the counter question is also quite a long reply. So in other words, here the Buddha is giving Asipataka a choice, and is gently, progressively following the ability of the audience to understand. So it is a very important teaching skill. So in fact, one of the things about looking at the suttas, you'll find it's a fantastic document in learning to teach people how to present your ideas in such a way that others can follow step by step and become wiser in that way. Alright, so 5.1, what do you think that man? Notice this question here, what do you think? So the Buddha didn't say, believe this, for I have spoken. He says, what do you think? Here a person destroys life, takes the not given, commits sexual misconduct, 3 wrong bodily actions, speaks falsely, speaks divisively, speaks harshly, chatters frivolously, 4 wrong speeches, and then who covets, has a heart of ill will, holds wrong views. These are 3 wrong grammar of mind. Altogether there are 10 here. These are 10 famous wrong causes of karmic action. Okay, this 10 I'm going to repeat for a while. So the Buddha says, in other words, in the case of someone who doesn't keep the precepts, right, who breaks all this, not only the 5 precepts here, but also intention, mentally also, body, speech and mind are negative. Right? So the Buddha said, take an example of this person who is negative, who is bad through body, speech and mind, all the 3 doors of action. 5.2. Then the great multitude were to gather and assemble around him, and they were to send up prayers, recite holy praises, circumambulate him with clasped hands in lotus gesture, saying, with the body's breakup after death, may this person be reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. Right? So in other words, here the Buddha says, okay, here this really bad guy, he has done all the bad things, body, speech and mind. Okay, he has passed away, and then his friends and important people all gather around, and they say, oh, may this person go to heaven, may this person go to heaven, and they do all kinds of prayers. You know the scenario, right? What do you think? Amen. Because of the great multitude sending up prayers, because of their reciting holy praises, because of their circumambulating him with clasped hands in lotus gesture, would that person with the bodies breaking up after death be reborn in a good destination in the heavenly world? Not at all, right? So here you have a very clear endorsement. In simple terms, prayers do not help to raise the dead to heaven. So what's the point of us engaging all those expensive funeral chanters, right? Someone told me yesterday, even funeral fees nowadays, going to 5 figures. It's very expensive to die. So expensive to live, expensive to die. So I told him one way is to go into deep meditation, practice fire kasina, and then just zap, combustion, self-combustion. That's like one of those, one of those famous Bambara Bakula. Or Ananda also passed away that way. Zap, no remnants, no problem, no funeral. Okay, there's a story about Ananda, because he was so beloved by 2 clans, opposing clans. I think it's the Sakyas and the Kolyas.
He self-combusted?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, he went to deep meditation, and he floated into the air over the river, separating the 2 clans, and then he kind of wheeled himself. It's like those really science fiction movies, He went into kind of self-combustion, and his relics kind of self-combust, and they split into more or less even amounts. Part of it falling to the Sakya side, part of it falling to the Kolya side, and both sides are happy.
Is this in the Canon or this?
This is in the commentaries, stories. Yeah. Anyway, the idea of self-compassion, we do have records of this kind of happenings, right? And scientists can explain what really happened. Anyway, the point is, prayers do not help when someone has passed away. Okay, just at this point, some will be scratching your head, oh dear, what does help? What do we do if someone passes away? I mean, these are real things that we have to deal with, right? Well, if you have listened to various sutta talks, dhamma talks before, by practicing Manas, and also, I have mentioned this a number of times, the most important thing is to have the loved ones around this. Loved ones. The people who are close to you, being around you. Okay? Because if the body is still there, and the person has just passed away, it's good to be there, and do lots of loving kindness. So quarreling, anger, are of course, really out of place at this time. We have to be truly happy for the good this person has lived for, and now that this person has moved on, it's like you're wishing a good friend who has stayed with you all his life, and you're saying, well, we say farewell. We don't say goodbye. Because goodbye originally meant, God be with ye. Be with ye, they shorten it, they became bye, B-Y-E. Okay? So this is old English, right? But farewell is more meaningful. Farewell means move on happily. Right? Sugata. Have a good rebirth. It's not really a prayer, but it's a joy that we have, that we remember this person with. And if this person has lived happily also, this person also practices meditation, or for that matter, even if it's an ordinary person and his consciousness is still kind of floating around there, uncertain where to go, this person can feel your joy, can feel your love. And that consciousness is kind of impressionable, so to speak. So if this consciousness can feel your loving kindness, your love at that moment of the very crucial moment, this person think happy thoughts, the thoughts arise, you say, wow, there are these people who care for me. I mean, it's just like it's your birthday, suddenly you got this birthday, surprise birthday gathering, and you feel good, you say, wow, people do care for me. So this person is able to be reborn in a happy state. That is the Buddhist explanation. Anyway, of course, even the better explanation is we ourselves, by practicing meditation, especially perception of impermanence, by our own mental calm, we are reborn in a happy state. So we don't really need other people praying for us, in other words. Whatever prayers, gathering people do, is more a social thing. People get together to meet and remember the good things in the meeting in the Dharma, in other words. So it doesn't really matter. We don't need all these prayers, so to speak. So this is the first part, right? Then the Buddha goes on to use a parable, the parable of the unfloating rock. 6.1. Suppose headman, a person were to throw a huge boulder into a deep lake, like throw a big stone into a deep lake, and then the stone sinks to the bottom of the lake. Then again you find this big crowd of people coming around, gathering around the lake. Right? So here again, very similar to the previous statement, the Buddha says, okay, all these people, they gather around the lake and then they start chanting and praying. They say, oh rock, rise up from the water, rise up from the water. So the Buddha asks, is it possible for this rock to rise from the water with all this combined prayer, if you like? Yeah? Can this rock arise? Not at all. Right? So then what is the meaning of this parable? 6.5. Even so, headman, in the case of a person who destroys life and so on, practices all the 10 wrong causes of karma, body, speech and mind are impure, this person will never go to heaven, will never find a good rebirth, no matter what kind of prayers you do. Now this statement is also useful for us to understand the so-called bedside conversions. You know, sometimes we have this evangelist coming to the intensive care ward, terminal care ward, you know, they start trying to convert people. So it's really no use. In other words, we don't really need their presence, we don't want it. In fact, they make things even more stressful for the sick. So there should be, in fact, a law against these things, but it is really encroaching on the rights of individuals. We call it entrapment, actually. So this way we have to take care of our loved ones, especially when they're sick in the last moments, to make sure they're not troubled by such people. Right, so this is the negative aspect. Now we come to the positive aspect, the moral person. 7.1. So what do you think, headman? Here a person refrains from destroying life, refrains from taking the not given, refrains from sexual misconduct. Okay, first 3 precepts, well kept. Refrains from false speech, refrains from divisive speech, refrains from harsh speech, refrains from idle chatter. Here you have the 4th precept, the precept on speech, expanded into all the 4 right speeches. And then the last 3 are dealing with the mind. He is not covetous. He has a heart free of ill will and holds right view. Here, right view means reflection and impermanence. Okay? So, body, speech, and mind are pure. Okay? This person passes away. Then, here's the opposite situation. 7.2. Then a great multitude were to gather and assemble around him, and they were to send up prayers, recite holy praises, circumambulate him with clasped hands in lotus gesture, saying, in this case, something negative. They say, with the body breaking up after death, may this person be reborn in the plane of misery, an evil destination, a lower realm in hell. And so these probably are enemies. They say, may this person suffer after death. What do you think, headman? So the Buddha asks, what do you think? Will all this prayer these people say and wish for, will it affect this dead person who has done good? Will he go to hell? Of course not at all. Right? So in other words, if you have done good stuff, you have lived a good life, meaning you have kept the precepts well, your mind is pure, no matter what negative thoughts people may have, they can't affect you. So here we have the parable of the what is called the sunken pot of oil, or ghee. Ghee is all made from cow's milk. So the Buddha says, imagine, okay, you have this jar of ghee, and it is sunk to the bottom of the lake, and then it breaks. What happens after that? The oil will just float up, you see? The oil will just float up. So here, the Buddha says, okay, all these people gather around the lake, and they're going to pray. They say, oh, this oil, may it sink down, may it sink down. But this is impossible. The oil will never sink down. So in other words, that our goodness is just like this pure oil. It will float up to the surface. It will rise to the occasion, so to speak. Right? So you see here the very interesting parables. Bad karma is represented by the rock that sinks to the bottom of the water, and good actions are like this oil that floats up to the surface of the water. So here, our actions, what we are, decides our future. If we live a good, pure life, and we maintain that pattern, habitually the karma is good, and here of course I would add to be more certain to practice possession and permanence, the last one will also be good. Of course here we're not talking about extreme meaning, just talking about going to heaven, so it's even simpler than that. A person who does bad deeds, no matter what prayers you give to this person, the person will be going to suffering state anyway. So this is belongs to the set of teachings where the Buddha says that prayers don't really help to make you go to heaven or go to hell for that matter. It's how you live you decide your future life. Alright? Now, of course, when we talk about karma, we have a bit of a problem here because the scholars they like to analyze and say, oh, what kind of karma is this? What kind of ethics is it? Is it consequentialist or is it virtual ethics? Consequentialist means if you do something, you will face the result of it, consequence, right? Whereas virtue ethics means whatever we do, we train ourselves to become better, right? Of course, the answer is we have both aspects in Buddhism. We have both consequentialist teachings as well as virtue teachings. In the case of, you see very clearly in the next sutta, second sutta, on the Karma Madhika Sutta, A4197, you see this consequentialist idea of karma more clearly. Here, this person lives keeping to the 10 precepts. Body, speech, and mind are good. And the person is reborn in a good state. But even in this life itself, the person lives well, right? So in Buddhism, we don't really bother about next life so much in this case. We say, well, in this life itself, the person is good, it does good, and death itself is good. So this is virtue ethics, in other words. It helps us to become a better person. And being a better person also means we're able to attain spiritual awakening, becoming a straight man. So that's my understanding. Virtue ethics, you attain, you head for awakening. Whereas consequentialist ethics, in other words, the fruit of karma, good karma, bad karma, we're talking about still being caught in this samsara. If you are reborn in heaven, the chances are you will fall from heaven again, right? And you go back and forth, up and down, just round and round. Whereas in the case of virtue ethics, you get out of the cycle, you get out of samsara, you head for awakening, for total liberation. That's one way we can understand this teaching, the difference between consequentialist ethics and virtue ethics.
So this part, the parable for oil, the oil inevitably floating up is consequential karma. Saying that.
Well, when parables are concerned, parables you can look both ways, you can interpret them both ways. The oil is under water, it goes up. Okay? So in other words, if you do something bad, the potential fruit will be also bad. There is no other way. But the potential, in other words, as long as the pot is not broken, the oil will float up, you see. So people say, well, I've done a bad thing, I don't see anything happening to me. Well, the pot is not broken, you see. The moment the pot breaks, the oil will float up. Of course, here we are reversing the meaning of this oil, this ghee parable, because it's used actually for good karma. But we can also, in a sense, use it for bad karma. So, in other words, there is a potential of this bad karma ripening, right? And then the same thing with good karma also. The person may say, oh, I've done good karma, how come I don't see the result? Again, the pot is not broken. The pot breaks, the oil will float up.
So I suppose you could say the pot breaking is the establishing of conditions.
Correct, the right conditions. Exactly. It's much easier if we think in terms of conditions rather than A resulting in B. It's never linear, it's never single. Many things working to bring something to happen. Okay? Okay, that's good. Any other questions or comments?
Mahana. This sutta is talks in terms of prayers at a funeral for the dead, not helping right away.
Yeah.
We can also apply to the living saying prayers and still not do but
Yeah.
just pray but not living the
Yes.
but not observing the
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So you can pray to the cow come home, but you don't
True,
live wholesomely. All your prayers are gone
Yeah.
after long.
Which
Is
reminds me.
that the same?
I've written a whole book on titled Buddhist Prayer, by the way. I've written on this book. It's kind of out of print. Buddhist Prayer. Okay. We have to look at this in two ways. How we pray, in other words. If you pray by way of wishing, whether good or bad, okay? May I be rich? May I be rich? You start
Yes.
praying, you start asking whichever God you believe in, may I find a beautiful partner? May I be rich? May I get a good job? You just pray, pray, pray. The Buddha says, you won't get it. I mean, if you can get it, then why not pray? Why just pray? It doesn't work that way. The Buddha says, if you want to be beautiful, you can't just pray. You want to be rich, you can't just pray. You have to live a life that would conduce to that kind of goal. You want to be rich, you have to live a life that brings you wealth. Meaning, you have to work hard, be diligent, be wise, be shrewd, right? You want to be beautiful, you have to live a life of good health and so on and so forth. So here we say the Buddha is pragmatic, in a sense. Right? So what the Buddha is saying is, so he's saying these prayers don't really work. But what about loving kindness? Do we call it prayer? Broadly speaking, yeah, we can say it is prayer. But loving kindness is more than just prayer. For example, if I say, may I be well and happy, and I reflect on that positive state. So I actually generate that very wholesome state in my mind, and I feel that state, and I feel good about it. It has a very positive effect on me. So that is here and now, it's real. So in that sense, it's not a prayer in the conventional sense, or if you can say it's Buddhist prayer, yes. It's a good kind of prayer, because you can see it working right now. That's why we don't really call it prayer. We say cultivation, we say meditation. Yeah. So that's the difference. Okay?
Did you say you wrote a book on Buddhist prayer?
Yeah, quite some time. We're trying to get someone to scan it and put it online. We just scanned the book called Mandala of the Five Buddhas, so it's available. But we find the site too big for us to put it online. So if anybody wants it, can write to us, we'll send it to you.
What is it?
Mandala of the Five Buddhas. This is actually a Mahayana Vajrayana idea, symbolism of the Buddhas. Yeah. This is a time when I was studying, it was non-Theravada Buddhism.